Document. Part 1 in the vast expanse of space, where stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across an endless black canvas. A small human warship drifted silently toward a gathering of alien vessels. The ship was sleek and compact, its silver hull reflecting faint traces of light from a distant sun. Unlike the towering behemoths surrounding it, this vessel looked almost delicate, as if it might shatter under the weight of cosmic forces. It was called the USS Dauntless, and it represented humanity's latest achievement in interstellar engineering. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. His sharp blue eyes scanned the viewscreen before him, taking in the sight of the assembled fleet. Dozens of ships, some massive and bristling with weapons, others sleek and angular, floated in formation around the Dauntless. Each one belonged to a different alien race, united by their participation in a joint military exercise designed to test tactics and showcase technological advancements. For humanity, this was both an opportunity and a challenge. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, still viewed with skepticism by many older, more established civilizations. Hayes knew what the other captains thought of the Dauntless. He could feel their disdain radiating through the diplomatic channels, even before they spoke to them. The human ship looked laughably small compared to the hulking dreadnoughts and battlecruisers that dominated the field. Its lack of visible armaments only added to their amusement. While the alien vessels boasted rows of cannons, glowing energy shields, and menacing spikes jutting from their hulls, the Dauntless appeared almost unassuming. If not for the distinctive Earth insignia painted on its side, it might have been mistaken for a scout ship or a courier vessel. The first voice to break the silence came over the comms system. "So, this is your great contribution." The speaker's tone dripped with mockery. On the screen, a reptilian figure leaned forward in his command chair, his scales glinting faintly under the artificial lights of his bridge. This was Commander Varnek, leader of the Zerathian fleet, and one of the most vocal critics of humanity's presence at the exercise. His elongated snout curled into a sneer as he continued, "I expected something, larger." A ripple of laughter spread among the other captains, though some tried to mask it as polite coughing. Hayes didn't flinch. He had anticipated this reaction. Humanity's reputation preceded them in these parts of the galaxy. Too many species, humans, were seen as fragile, short-lived creatures who had barely mastered space travel. Their inclusion in such high-profile exercises was often met with skepticism, if not outright hostility. Rachel Dawson, the human liaison officer stationed aboard an alien flagship nearby, winced as she heard the comments. She had worked tirelessly to build bridges between humanity and the other races, but moments like these made her efforts feel futile. Through gritted teeth, she responded diplomatically, "The Dauntless may not look impressive, but its capabilities speak for themselves." Her words fell flat, drowned out by another wave of chuckles. Back on the Dauntless, Lieutenant Emily Blake, the ship's chief engineer, glanced at Captain Hayes. "Permission to tell them exactly how wrong they are, sir?" she asked, her tone laced with frustration. Blake was fiercely protective of the ship she had helped design. Every inch of the Dauntless had been crafted with precision, balancing speed, agility, and firepower in ways no other vessel in known space could match. But explaining that now would only fuel the ridicule. "Not yet," Hayes replied calmly, his gaze fixed on the viewscreen. "Let them underestimate us. It'll make the lesson all the sweeter later." Meanwhile, aboard the alien ships, the mockery continued. A bulky insectoid captain named Crix muttered to his crew, "Perhaps the humans think size doesn't matter. How quaint." Another commander, a bird-like being with iridescent feathers, clucked dismissively, "Their technology must be primitive if they rely on stealth instead of strength." Even those who remained silent wore expressions of smug superiority, convinced that humanity's attempt to compete was nothing more than a childish display of bravado. But there was one exception. Lyra Solon, captain of the feline-like Faloran fleet, observed the Dauntless with keen interest. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly as she studied the human ship's movements. Though it hovered quietly in place, there was something about its posture, a subtle readiness that caught her attention. Solon had spent decades honing her tactical instincts, and they rarely failed her. Something about the Dauntless felt calculated, dangerous. Even as the initial introductions concluded and the fleets prepared for the first round of exercises, the tension lingered. The aliens treated the Dauntless as little more than a curiosity, a sideshow to the main event. Few bothered to listen when Hayes outlined his ship's role in the upcoming drills. When the Dauntless finally moved into position, executing a series of warm-up maneuvers, the other captains dismissed its performance as irrelevant. After all, what harm could such a tiny ship possibly pose? What none of them realized was that, beneath its modest exterior, the Dauntless carried secrets that would soon rewrite their understanding of warfare and humanity's place in the galaxy. For now, however, the laughter echoed unchecked, bouncing off the cold void of space like a cruel joke waiting to unravel. Hours passed as the exercise began in earnest. Massive alien cruisers lumbered into formation, firing simulated blasts at designated targets. Smaller fighter craft zipped between them, weaving intricate patterns that left trails of glowing plasma in their wake. Energy shields flared brightly as mock attacks struck home, creating dazzling displays of light and color. The spectacle was breathtaking, a testament to the advanced technologies wielded by each participating faction. And then, amidst the chaos, the Dauntless made its move. With a burst of acceleration that seemed to defy physics, it shot forward, leaving streaks of ionized particles in its path. Its engines roared silently in the vacuum, propelling it faster than any ship present. Sensors struggled to track its trajectory, and within moments, it disappeared from view entirely. The reactions were immediate and incredulous. "What just happened?" demanded Commander Varnak, his voice rising an octave. "Where did it go?" "It can't have vanished," Crix growled, mandibles clicking in agitation. "No ship can move that fast." Lyra Solon said nothing, her expression unreadable, but deep down, a spark of admiration flickered to life. Perhaps, she thought, humanity wasn't quite the laughingstock everyone assumed. Unbeknownst to the others, the Dauntless had already completed its assigned task, disabling several simulated enemy targets with pinpoint accuracy, and while the aliens debated whether the human ship's disappearance was a glitch or a trick, Captain Hayes allowed himself a faint smile. The real show, he knew, was only beginning. Document Part 2. The first day of the exercises began with a flurry of activity. The alien fleets, eager to demonstrate their dominance, launched into the simulated combat scenarios with gusto. Massive dreadnoughts lumbered across the battlefield, unleashing barrages of glowing energy bolts that lit up the void of space. Sleek fighters darted between the larger ships, performing acrobatic maneuvers that left trails of shimmering plasma in their wake. Energy shields flared brightly as mock attacks struck home, creating dazzling displays of light and color. It was a spectacle designed to showcase power, precision, and technological superiority. Amidst this chaos, the USS Dauntless remained conspicuously absent from the action. Captain Jonathan Hayes had instructed his crew to hold back, observing the movements of the other ships while waiting for their turn. From the bridge, Hayes watched intently as the aliens performed their routines, noting both their strengths and weaknesses. Lieutenant Emily Blake monitored the ship's systems, ensuring everything was ready for when they would finally step into the spotlight. Chief Navigator Daniel Carter plotted potential courses, mentally preparing for the challenges ahead. Despite their preparations, the crew of the Dauntless couldn't help but feel the weight of the skepticism surrounding them. On the comms channels, the alien captains continued to mock humanity's contribution to the exercise. Still hiding, humans, Commander Varnak sneered during a lull in the action. Perhaps your ship is too fragile to join the real fight. His words were met with snickers from several of the other commanders, who seemed more interested in belittling the Dauntless than focusing on their own performances. Rachel Dawson, stationed aboard an alien flagship nearby, clenched her fists as she'll listen to the G. She had spent years building relationships with these races, trying to prove that humanity deserved a seat at the galactic table. But moments like this made her feel like all her efforts were unraveling before her eyes. When she tried to defend the Dauntless, her arguments were brushed aside. Let them try, one of the captains remarked dismissively. If their ship can even keep up, we'll be impressed. Finally, it was time for the Dauntless to take its place in the exercise. Hayes gave the order, and the small human warship glided smoothly into position. As it moved, the chatter among the alien fleets grew louder. Look at it go, Crix muttered sarcastically, his insectoid limbs clicking together in amusement. Such speed, such intimidation. The bird-like captain beside him let out a series of clucks that sounded suspiciously like laughter. But then something unexpected happened. The Dauntless didn't just move, it surged forward with a burst of acceleration that left everyone stunned. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from view, reappearing moments later near a cluster of simulated enemy targets. Before anyone could react, it unleashed a series of precise strikes, disabling the targets with pinpoint accuracy. Then, just as quickly, it vanished again, leaving behind only faint traces of ionized particles. For a moment, there was silence. The alien captains stared at their screens, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Was that real? One of them asked hesitantly. Another shook their head in disbelief. No ship can move that fast. It must be a glitch in the sensors. Commander, Varnak scowled, his reptilian features twisting in frustration. This is nonsense, he growled. A trick, an illusion. Humans are cowards, relying on deception instead of strength. His voice carried across the comms channels, rallying the others to share his skepticism. Slowly, the laughter returned, though it lacked the confidence it had before. On the Dauntless, the mood was calm, but focused. Hayes turned to his crew, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Well done, he said simply. Now, let's see if they're paying attention. Lieutenant Blake leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly. They're still laughing, she said, shaking her head. Even after that, they think it's some kind of joke. Let them laugh, Hayes replied. They'll understand soon enough. Back among the alien fleets, opinions were divided. While most dismissed the Dauntless performance as irrelevant, a few began to wonder if there was more to the human ship than met the eye. Lyra Solon, the Faloran captain, was one of them. She had been watching the Dauntless closely since its arrival, and what she saw intrigued her. Unlike the others, she recognized the significance of the ship's speed and agility. It wasn't a glitch, she said quietly to her crew. That ship is faster than anything we've encountered, and it didn't just move, it struck with purpose. Her second in command, a younger Faloran named Tyrion, tilted his head curiously. You think it's a threat? I think it's worth studying, Solon replied. Humans may not have the size or firepower of our fleets, but they clearly value efficiency. That ship isn't here to impress us with brute force. It's here to show us something else entirely. As the exercise continued, the Dauntless performed several more maneuvers, each one highlighting its unique capabilities. It darted through the battlefield like a ghost, evading simulated attacks with ease, and striking targets with surgical precision. Every time it moved, the alien sensors struggled to keep up, rendering it nearly invisible on their displays. Yet, despite its obvious skill, the mockery persisted. To the other captains, the Dauntless was still too small, too unassuming, to pose any real challenge. Rachel Dawson, however, noticed a shift in the tone of the comments. While the laughter remained, there was a subtle undercurrent of unease. Some of the captains began to question whether they had underestimated the human ship. One of them, a bulky quadrupedal being named Gorlak, muttered gruffly, "Perhaps we should watch them more carefully. Speed like that could be dangerous in a real fight." Dawson seized the opportunity to speak up. "Exactly," she said firmly. "The Dauntless may not look like much, but its design prioritizes mobility and precision over sheer size. Those are qualities that can make a difference in battle." Her words fell on deaf ears once again, but she didn't let it discourage her. Deep down, she knew the truth. The Dauntless wasn't just a ship, was a statement. Humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they weren't here to follow the same old rules. They were here to rewrite them. By the end of the day, the Dauntless had completed all its assigned tasks with flawless efficiency. Yet when the results of the exercise were reviewed, the alien captains barely acknowledged its achievements. Instead, they focused on the performances of their own ships, boasting about their firepower and resilience. The humans, they agreed, were amusing, but ultimately insignificant. Captain Hayes accepted their dismissal with quiet dignity. He knew better than to expect immediate recognition. What mattered was that his crew had proven themselves, not just to the aliens, but to themselves. As the Dauntless drifted back to its position at the edge of the fleet, Hayes addressed his team. "Today was just the beginning," he said. "We showed them what we're capable of. Tomorrow, we'll show them why they should never underestimate us." The crew nodded, their expressions resolute. They had weathered the ridicule, proven their worth, and planted the seeds of doubt in the minds of their critics. Though the road ahead would be challenging, they were ready to face whatever came next. After all, the Dauntless wasn't built to blend in, it was built to stand out, and standing out was something it did very, very well. Document Part 3. The second day of the exercises began with a quiet tension hanging over the assembled fleet. The alien captains had spent the night debating the USS Dauntless' performance, though most still dismissed it as irrelevant. To them, speed and agility were secondary to raw power and size. What good was a fast ship if it couldn't withstand a direct hit? Still, there were whispers, small cracks in their confidence that hinted at unease. Lyra Solon, the Falaran captain, had been particularly vocal about studying the human vessel more closely. Her curiosity had sparked doubts in others, even if they weren't ready to admit it. Captain Jonathan Hayes, aboard the Dauntless, sensed the shift but didn't let it distract him. He knew that proving the ship's worth would take time. For now, he focused on preparing his crew for the next round of drills. Lieutenant Emily Blake ran diagnostics on the engines, ensuring they could handle another day of high-speed maneuvers. Chief Navigator Daniel Carter reviewed the data from the previous day, looking for ways to refine their tactics. Everyone worked with quiet determination, knowing they were being watched even if the watching eyes were skeptical. Rachel Dawson, stationed aboard an alien flagship, found herself in an awkward position. The humans' liaison officer was supposed to bridge gaps between Earth and the other races, but the mockery directed at the Dauntless made her job nearly impossible. When she tried to explain the ship's capabilities, her words were met with condescension or outright dismissal. One captain, a hulking quadruped named Gorlak, sneered at her during breakfast. "Your little ship is cute," he rumbled, his deep voice vibrating through the room, "but it's no match for real warships. Why do you waste your breath defending it?" Dawson forced a smile, though her hands tightened into fists beneath the table. "Maybe you should watch instead of judge," she replied evenly. "You might learn something." Gorlak chuckled, a low rumble that sounded like distant thunder. "We'll see," he said, turning back to his meal. But Dawson noticed something in his tone, a flicker of uncertainty. It wasn't much, but it gave her hope. As the drills resumed, the alien fleets launched into action once again. Their massive ships lumbered across the simulated battlefield, firing broadsides and deploying fighters in coordinated attacks. The spectacle was impressive, showcasing the strength and coordination of each race. Yet despite their power, their movements felt predictable. The larger ships relied on brute force, while the smaller ones darted around in patterns that were easy to anticipate. They fought like machines, efficient but rigid. Then came the Dauntless. Once again, it held back, waiting for its turn. When the signal came, it surged forward with breathtaking speed, leaving trails of ionized particles in its wake. The alien captains watched intently this time, their earlier mockery giving way to cautious observation. The human ship weaved through the chaos of the battlefield, avoiding simulated attacks with ease. Its movements were fluid, almost graceful, as if it danced among the explosions and energy blasts. But what truly caught everyone's attention was how it struck. The Dauntless didn't just disable targets, it dismantled them. With surgical precision, it targeted critical systems, disabling engines, weapons arrays, and communication hubs before disappearing again. Each strike was quick and devastating, leaving its opponents reeling. Even Commander Varnak, who had mocked the ship relentlessly, found himself leaning forward in his chair, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he studied the human vessel. Lyra Solon watched silently, her golden gaze fixed on the viewscreen. She had suspected the Dauntless was special, but seeing it in action confirmed her suspicions. This wasn't just a fast ship, was a predator. Every movement served a purpose, every decision calculated to maximize impact. Solon turned to her second-in-command, Tiarn. "That ship isn't here to play games," she said softly. "It's here to teach us a lesson." Tiarn tilted his head curiously. "A lesson in what?" "In adaptability," Solon replied. "In thinking differently. Humans don't have our size or firepower, so they rely on speed and strategy. They've turned their weaknesses into strengths." On the comms channels, the tone of the conversation shifted. While some captains still laughed, others began to voice concerns. "It's too unpredictable," one of them muttered. "How do you fight something you can't track?" Another added, "If those strikes were real, we'd be dead already." Commander Varnak remained defiant, though there was a hint of irritation in his voice. "It's all smoke and mirrors," he insisted. "Their ship is fast, yes, but it can't hold up against sustained fire. Mark my words, they'll crumble under pressure." Despite his bravado, Varnak couldn't ignore the growing unease among his peers. Several captains approached Solon after the drill, asking for her thoughts on the Dauntless. She answered honestly, praising the human ship's ingenuity while cautioning against underestimating it. "Speed alone isn't enough to win a battle," she admitted. "But when combined with precision and intelligence, it becomes a formidable weapon. We should respect that." Her words carried weight, especially among the younger captains, who looked up to her as a tactical genius. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The laughter faded, replaced by murmurs of curiosity and concern. Even Rachel Dawson noticed the change. When she spoke about the Dauntless now, fewer people rolled their eyes. Some even listened. After the drills ended, Captain Hayes received an unexpected visitor. A message appeared on his console, requesting a private meeting. It was from Lyra Solon. Intrigued, Hayes accepted and arranged to meet her aboard a neutral observation platform near the fleet. As he stepped onto the platform, he saw Solon waiting for him, her feline features calm but alert. "Captain Hayes," she greeted him, inclining her head slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me." Hayes nodded in return. "Captain Solon, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Solon gestured for him to sit. "I wanted to discuss your ship," she said bluntly. "The Dauntless has intrigued me. Your approach to combat is unlike anything I've seen before. I'd like to understand it better." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Most of your colleagues seem content to mock us. Why the interest?" "Because I value innovation," Solon replied. "Too often, we cling to tradition, assuming that bigger is always better. Your ship challenges that assumption. It makes me wonder what else might we be missing. For a moment, Hayes considered declining to answer. Trust didn't come easily in situations like this, but something about Solon's sincerity resonated with him. The Dauntless wasn't designed to compete with your ships head-on, he explained. We knew we couldn't match your size or firepower, so we focused on what we could control: speed, agility, and precision. Our goal isn't to overpower the enemy, it's to outthink them. Solon nodded thoughtfully. An admirable philosophy, and clearly effective. Tell me, Captain, do you believe your ship could hold its own in a real battle, against a foe that doesn't pull punches? Hayes hesitated. He hadn't expected such a direct question. I believe in my crew, he said finally, and I believe in the Dauntless. Together, we're capable of more than anyone gives us credit for, including ourselves. Solon smiled faintly, revealing sharp teeth. Good, because I suspect you'll need that confidence sooner than you think. Before Hayes could ask what she meant, Solon rose to leave. Thank you for your time, Captain. I look forward to seeing more of what your ship can do. With that, she departed, leaving Hayes to ponder her cryptic warning. Back aboard the Dauntless, Hayes shared the encounter with his crew. Lieutenant Blake frowned. Do you think she knows something we don't? It's possible, Hayes admitted, but whether she does or not, we need to stay sharp. If Solon's taking us seriously, others might start to as well. As the crew prepared for the next day's exercises, a new sense of purpose filled the air. The Dauntless had proven itself twice now, earning grudging respect from at least one alien captain. But Hayes knew the hardest battles were yet to come. Respect was fleeting, and trust even more fragile. To truly earn their place among these ancient civilizations, humanity would have to keep pushing boundaries and proving doubters wrong. Little did they know, the opportunity to do just that would arrive sooner than anyone expected. Document. Part for the third day of the exercises started, much like the others, with the alien fleets gathering for another round of simulated battles. The mood, however, was different. The laughter that had once filled the comms channels had quieted, replaced by a tense curiosity. Even Commander Varnak, who had been the loudest critic of the USS Dauntless, seemed more subdued. His reptilian eyes darted to the human ship whenever it moved, as if he were waiting for it to reveal some hidden weakness. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood on the bridge of the Dauntless. Watching the other ships take their positions, he could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The aliens weren't mocking anymore, they were observing. Every movement of the Dauntless was being analyzed, dissected, and debated. Hayes didn't let it bother him. Instead, he focused on keeping his crew sharp. Lieutenant Emily Blake ran final checks on the engines, ensuring they were ready for whatever came next. Chief Navigator Daniel Carter plotted potential courses, his fingers flying over the console as he anticipated every possible scenario. Rachel Dawson, stationed aboard an alien flagship, noticed the change to the captains who had once dismissed. The Dauntless outright now spoke about it in hushed tones. Some still doubted its effectiveness, but others, like Lyra, Solon openly praised its ingenuity. Dawson found herself in a better position to defend humanity's contributions, though she knew the real test would come when the aliens stopped talking and started acting as the drills began. The alien fleets launched into action with their usual displays of power. Massive dreadnoughts unleashed barrages of energy bolts, while smaller fighters zipped through the chaos, weaving intricate patterns that left trails of glowing plasma. The battlefield was a dazzling spectacle of light and motion, showcasing the strength and coordination of each race. Yet despite their might, their movements felt predictable, almost mechanical. Then came the Dauntless. Once again, it held back, waiting for its turn. When the signal came, it surged forward with breathtaking speed, leaving streaks of ionized particles in its wake. The alien captains watched intently, their earlier mockery giving way to cautious observation. The human ship weaved through the battlefield, avoiding simulated attacks with ease. Its movements were fluid, almost graceful, as if it danced among the explosions and energy blasts. But what truly caught everyone's attention was how it struck. The Dauntless didn't just disable targets, it dismantled them. With surgical precision, it targeted critical systems, disabling engines, weapons arrays, and communication hubs before disappearing again. Each strike was quick and devastating, leaving its opponents reeling. Even Commander Varnak, who had mocked the ship relentlessly, found himself leaning forward in his chair, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he studied the human vessel. Lyra Solon watched silently, her golden gaze fixed on the view screen. She had suspected the Dauntless was special, but seeing it in action confirmed her suspicions. This wasn't just a fast ship, it was a predator. Every movement served a purpose, every decision calculated to maximize impact. Solon turned to her second-in-command, Tiran. "That ship isn't here to play games," she said softly. "It's here to teach us a lesson." Tiran tilted his head curiously. "A lesson in what?" "In adaptability," Solon replied. "In thinking differently. Humans don't have our size or firepower, so they rely on speed and strategy. They've turned their weaknesses into strengths." On the comms channels, the tone of the conversation shifted. While some captains still laughed, others began to voice concerns. "It's too unpredictable," one of them muttered. "How do you fight something you can't track?" Another added, "If those strikes were real, we'd be dead already." Commander Varnak remained defiant, though there was a hint of irritation in his voice. "It's all smoke and mirrors," he insisted. "Their ship is fast, yes, but it can't hold up against sustained fire. Mark my words, they'll crumble under pressure." Despite his bravado, Varnak couldn't ignore the growing unease among his peers. Several captains approached Solon after the drill, asking for her thoughts on the Dauntless. She answered honestly, praising the human ship's ingenuity while cautioning against underestimating it. "Speed alone isn't enough to win a battle," she admitted, "but when combined with precision and intelligence, it becomes a formidable weapon. We should respect that." Her words carried weight, especially among the younger captains who looked up to her as a tactical genius. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The laughter faded, replaced by murmurs of curiosity and concern. Even Rachel Dawson noticed the change. When she spoke about the Dauntless now, fewer people rolled their eyes. Some even listened. After the drills ended, Captain Hayes received an unexpected visitor. A message appeared on his console, requesting a private meeting. It was from Lyra Solon. Intrigued, Hayes accepted and arranged to meet her aboard a neutral observation platform near the fleet. As he stepped onto the platform, he saw Solon waiting for him, her feline features calm but alert. "Captain Hayes," she greeted him, inclining her head slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me." Hayes nodded in return. "Captain Solon, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Solon gestured for him to sit. "I wanted to discuss your ship," she said bluntly. "The Dauntless has intrigued me. Your approach to combat is unlike anything I've seen before. I'd like to understand it better." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Most of your colleagues seem content to mock us. Why the interest?" "Because I value innovation," Solon replied. "Too often, we cling to tradition, assuming that bigger is always better. Your ship challenges that assumption. It makes me wonder what else might we be missing." For a moment, Hayes considered declining to answer. Trust didn't come easily in situations like this. But something about Solon's sincerity resonated with him. "The Dauntless wasn't designed to compete with your ships head-on," he explained. "We knew we couldn't match your size or firepower, so we focused on what we could control: speed, agility, and precision. Our goal isn't to overpower the enemy, it's to outthink them." Solon nodded thoughtfully. "An admirable philosophy, and clearly effective. Tell me, Captain Du, You believe your ship could hold its own in a real battle against a foe that doesn't pull punches? Hayes hesitated. He hadn't expected such a direct question. I believe in my crew, he said finally, and I believe in the Dauntless. Together, we're capable of more than anyone gives us credit for, including ourselves. Solon smiled faintly, revealing sharp teeth. Good, because I suspect you'll need that confidence sooner than you think. Before Hayes could ask what she meant, Solon rose to leave. Thank you for your time, Captain. I look forward to seeing more of what your ship can do. With that, she departed, leaving Hayes to ponder her cryptic warning. Back aboard the Dauntless, Hayes shared the encounter with his crew. Lieutenant Blake frowned. Do you think she knows something we don't? It's possible, Hayes admitted. But whether she does or not, we need to stay sharp. If Solon's taking us seriously, others might start to as well. As the crew prepared for the next day's exercises, a new sense of purpose filled the air. The Dauntless had proven itself twice now, earning grudging respect from at least one alien captain. But Hayes knew the hardest battles were yet to come. Respect was fleeting, and trust even more fragile. To truly earn their place among these ancient civilizations, humanity would have to keep pushing boundaries and proving doubters wrong. Little did they know, the opportunity to do just that would arrive sooner than anyone expected. The fourth day dawned with an unsettling calm. The stars shimmered brightly in the void, and the assembled fleet drifted quietly in formation. There was no chatter on the comms channels, no boasts or jeers from the alien captains. Something felt off. Captain Hayes noticed it immediately. The tension aboard the Dauntless grew palpable as his crew exchanged uneasy glances. Then, without warning, alarms blared across the fleet. A massive armada emerged from hyperspace, surrounding the gathered ships. These newcomers were unlike any species the humans or their allies had encountered before. Their vessels were enormous, bristling with weapons that glowed ominously. At the forefront was a towering command ship, its surface covered in jagged spires that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. This is Commander Tharak of the Krylos Dominion. A deep, guttural voice boomed over the comms. You are trespassing in our territory. Surrender now, or be annihilated. Panic rippled through the assembled fleet. The aliens scrambled to form defensive lines, but their confusion was evident. No one had expected this. The Krylos ships loomed menacingly, their sheer size dwarfing even the largest dreadnoughts. Tharak's voice cut through the chaos again, dripping with arrogance. Your pathetic attempts at resistance amuse me. You are unworthy of ruling this sector. Prepare to face your doom. Amidst the fear and uncertainty, all eyes turned to the Dauntless. Commander Varnak sneered openly, pointing at the small human ship. This is your fault, humans. Your presence has drawn these monsters here. Hayes ignored the bickering, focusing instead on the situation at hand. The Krylos fleet outnumbered them, outgunned them, and outclassed them in every measurable way. But surrender wasn't an option, not for humanity. He activated the comms, addressing the entire fleet. Listen to me, he said firmly. We may not have the document. Part 5. The battlefield was chaos. Energy bolts streaked across the void, lighting up the darkness with bursts of blinding light. The Krylos fleet pressed forward relentlessly, their massive ships unleashing devastating barrages that overwhelmed the defenders' shields. Explosions rippled through space as alien vessels crumbled under the assault, their crews scrambling to retreat or regroup. Panic spread like wildfire among the assembled fleets, and for a moment, it seemed as though all hope was lost. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Dauntless, his jaw clenched tightly. He watched the carnage unfold on the view screen, his mind racing with calculations. The odds were stacked heavily against them. The Krylos ships were larger, stronger, and far more numerous than anything humanity or its allies had ever faced. Their weapons tore through defenses with ease, and their sheer size made them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. Even the combined might of the alien fleets couldn't hold the line for long. Rachel Dawson, stationed aboard an alien flagship nearby, felt her heart sink as she witnessed the destruction. The humans' allies, once skeptical of Earth's contributions, now looked to her for answers. "What do we do?" one captain asked, his voice trembling with desperation. "Your ship is fast, but speed alone won't save us." Dawson wanted to respond, to reassure them that humanity had a plan. But the truth was, she didn't know what to say. The situation felt hopeless. The Krylos fleet was overwhelming, and every second that passed brought them closer to annihilation. She glanced at the Dauntless in the distance, its small silhouette darting through the chaos. It was moving too quickly for the enemy to track, striking at weak points in their formation before vanishing again. But even the Dauntless couldn't fight an entire armada on its own. Back aboard the human warship, Hayes gathered his crew for an emergency meeting. Lieutenant Emily Blake sat at her station, her hands hovering over the controls as she monitored the engines. Chief Navigator Daniel Carter leaned over a holographic map of the battlefield, plotting potential escape routes. The tension in the room was thick, but no one spoke. They all knew the stakes. "We can't keep this up forever," Blake said finally, breaking the silence. "Even with our speed, we're outnumbered. Sooner or later, they'll corner us." Hayes nodded grimly. "Agreed. Speed alone isn't enough. We need a strategy, a way to turn this around." Carter frowned, studying the map. "If we could disable their command ship, it might throw them into disarray. Without leadership, their fleet would fall apart." "That's easier said than done," Blake countered. "Their command ship is surrounded by a wall of cruisers. We'd never get close enough to strike." Hayes stared at the map, his mind working furiously. "Maybe we don't need to get close," he said slowly. "What if we use their own tactics against them? Divide and conquer." The idea was risky, but it was their only chance. Hayes outlined a plan. The Dauntless would lead a series of hit-and-run attacks, targeting key systems on the Krylos ships to create gaps in their formation. Once those gaps were wide enough, the larger alien vessels could push through and focus their firepower on the command ship. It was a gamble, one that relied entirely on timing and precision, but it was better than sitting back and waiting to be destroyed. As soon as the plan was set, Hayes addressed the other captains over the comms. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice steady, despite the chaos around him. "We've got one shot at this. Follow my lead, and trust me. If we work together, we can take down their command ship." The response was mixed. Some captains hesitated, unsure whether to believe the human who had been mocked just days earlier. Commander Varnek predictably scoffed at the idea. "This is madness," he growled. "Your tiny ship will be torn apart before you even reach their fleet." But Lyra stepped in, her calm demeanor cutting through the noise. "Captain Hayes is right," she said firmly. "We have no other choice. If we don't act now, we're finished." Her words carried weight, especially among the younger captains who respected her tactical brilliance. Slowly, reluctantly, the others agreed to follow Hayes' lead. The plan was simple, but dangerous. The Dauntless would act as bait, drawing the Krylos fleet's attention while the larger ships prepared to strike. It was a suicide mission, or so it seemed. With the fleet mobilized, the Dauntless surged forward, its engines roaring silently in the vacuum of space. The small human ship darted through the battlefield, weaving between the massive Krylos vessels with breathtaking agility. Every time it moved, it left behind faint trails of ionized particles, making it difficult for the enemy to track. Its first target was a cruiser guarding the flank of the command ship. With pinpoint accuracy, the Dauntless disabled its engines, leaving the vessel drifting helplessly in space. The Krylos fleet reacted immediately, redirecting their fire toward the elusive human ship. Therek's voice crackled over the comms, filled with rage. "That pest is becoming a nuisance. Focus all weapons on it. As the Krylos ships turned their attention to the Dauntless, gaps began to form in their formation. The larger alien vessels seized the opportunity, pushing forward and firing concentrated barrages at the exposed cruisers. Shields flared brightly as explosions rocked the battlefield, sending debris spiraling into the void. For the first time since the attack began, the tide started to shift. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Hayes kept his eyes fixed on the view screen. His crew worked tirelessly, monitoring the ship's systems and plotting each maneuver with precision. Blake's hands danced over the controls, keeping the engines running at maximum capacity. Carter adjusted their course in real time, ensuring they stayed one step ahead of the enemy. "Another cruiser down," Carter announced, pointing to the map. "That's 2 gaps opened. Keep it up." Hayes nodded, his expression resolute. "Not done yet. Let's go after the next one." The Dauntless continued its relentless assault, striking at critical systems on the Krylos ships and forcing them to divert resources to repairs. Each hit created another gap, giving the Allied fleet more room to maneuver. The Krylos commanders, realizing their formation was crumbling, scrambled to compensate. But their efforts were too slow, too clumsy. The Dauntless was simply too fast, too unpredictable. Meanwhile, Rachel Dawson coordinated with the alien captains, urging them to press their advantage. "Now's your chance," she shouted over the comms. "Push through and hit their command ship." The larger ships responded, pouring everything they had into the breach. Massive dreadnoughts unleashed broadsides of energy bolts, while smaller fighters swarmed around the Krylos vessels, picking off stragglers. The command ship, once surrounded by a protective wall of cruisers, now stood exposed. Its shields flickered under the relentless barrage, and for the first time, doubt crept into Thor's voice. "This cannot be happening," he snarled, his tone laced with disbelief. "How are these insects still standing?" Hayes heard the frustration in Therek's words and allowed himself a faint smile. Humanity wasn't winning yet, but they had proven something important. They weren't going down without a fight. The Dauntless wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of resilience, of ingenuity, of the refusal to give up even when the odds seemed insurmountable. As the battle raged on, the Krylos fleet began to falter. Their once impenetrable formation was now riddled with holes, and their command ship teetered on the brink of collapse. The Allied fleet pressed forward, determined to finish what the Dauntless had started. But Hayes knew the fight wasn't over. The Krylos were still dangerous, and one wrong move could spell disaster for everyone. "Stay sharp," he told his crew. "We've got them on the ropes, but they're not beaten yet." Blake nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. "Engines are holding steady. What's the next target?" Hayes studied the battlefield, searching for an opening. Then he saw it, a vulnerable section of the command ship's hull, exposed by the collapsing shields. If they could strike there, they might deliver the final blow. "Prepare for one last run," he ordered. "This is it. Make it count." The Dauntless surged forward once more, its engines blazing with raw power. The Krylos fleet scrambled to intercept, but it was too late. The human ship slipped past their defenses, delivering a devastating strike to the command ship's exposed hull. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the vessel, and within moments, its shields collapsed entirely. Therek's voice roared over the comms, filled with fury and disbelief. "You dare challenge us, you insignificant worms." But his bravado was hollow. The Krylos fleet, leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. One by one, their ships pulled back, disappearing into hyperspace until only empty space remained. On the Dauntless, the crew let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. Hayes turned to his team, a look of quiet pride on his face. "Good work," he said simply. "We did it." Rachel Dawson, watching from afar, felt a surge of relief and admiration. Against all odds, humanity had risen to the challenge. The Dauntless had proven its worth, earning respect from allies and enemies alike. And though the road ahead would be long, one thing was certain: humanity had carved out its place among the stars.